All right. Well, welcome everybody once again to another edition of What Do You Believe? I'm Devin Croner, your host, pastor, real estate agent, and I'm happy to have you along today as we continue discussing experiences, interests, beliefs, passions with people from all different sorts of walks of life and backgrounds, all different experiences, all different belief sets. You know, I believe that there is such a thing as truth. I believe that there is such a thing as right and wrong, but I believe that it's also important that we talk with one another, that we communicate with one another, that we listen to one another, and that we take the time to understand. When it comes to beliefs specifically, understanding what other people believe can help us not just win arguments, but it can help us codify what I believe and why. But understanding other people's backgrounds and passions and experiences can clue us into things that maybe we never thought of, things that we never would have dreamed of imagining or participating in or trying or looking into or becoming passionate about ourselves. And so I'm excited to bring in a special guest today by the name of Jimmy Dooley. He is a traveling musician, songwriter, and just a really all-around great guy. Jimmy, how are you? Can you hear me? He's getting plugged in. Can you hear me? Are you muted down in the bottom? Uh-oh. Let's see here. It says you are connecting to audio. So we'll give it just a second.
Okay.
All right. There we are. How you doing, my friend?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. First
Sorry,
of all, thank you for joining me, taking the time to have this discussion. Really do appreciate it. To start off with, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, your background.
My name's Jimmy Dooley, and I am a singer-songwriter from Amelia, Ohio, close to Cincinnati area. And just I don't know what else there really is too much. I married, have two little ones, little girl that's 6, little boy that's 3. My wife and I have been married almost 18 years, and been involved in full-time ministry basically since that time. And so that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Very cool. Now, what did you do? What was life like before you got into being a singer-songwriter?
Well, I actually started pretty young, so I've always been involved in ministry. I started preaching before I started music. So when I was 14 years old, I started preaching, and I would go around and do revivals all the time and stuff like that. So I kind of did that till I was about 19, 20. And then when I got about 19, 20, I started doing more of the music stuff. So it kind of shifted for me. But that was basically my life when I was a teenager. I did nothing but go to church and preach and sing. And so that was pretty much my life.
Now, given that, are you the kind of person that is maybe a little burnt out on church at this stage of your life because you've been involved in it so much, or do you still enjoy going into churches?
I enjoy it. It's great, and especially this year with the whole COVID thing, we had 4.5 months off essentially where we weren't doing this. We had about 50 concerts canceled. So I think not just for myself, but one thing we've noticed for a lot of people who attend church, I think it made people miss it and not take it for granted so much. And so we've been back out on the road since the beginning of August. We've done about 16 or 17 concerts, and it's been great. I think there's been a change in the atmosphere for people where they're kind of renewed a little bit in their spirit and wanting to be there and stuff like that. And so, I can't lie and say that every place we go to is always great, because there are times that, we've had some bad situations, but that's just with anything you do in life that's going to happen. But for the most part, we really enjoy it, and we have a good time doing it. So.
Well, hopefully there was at least one place in Wilder that you enjoyed going a couple of times.
Yeah, there's definitely one out there.
So how did you get into the songwriting aspect? Did you just have an idea for a song one day? I mean, do you remember that part of it? Talk about that a little bit.
Um, well, I actually, when I was a teenage kid, was really big into hip hop music. And so I actually used to do hip hop music at clubs and stuff. When I was like 13, 14 years old, they'd let us come into these clubs and me and my friends would dance and put on these little hip hop shows. And so I would write songs then. I'm not sure what they actually were off the top of my head. I'm sure they weren't good, but I would write songs then. And then once I started doing the ministry stuff, we kind of did like Christian hip hop music, and the churches that I went to at the time were very conservative. So they told us it was devil's music and all kinds of stuff. So we were just kids. We didn't know any better. So we listened to them. But I think really, I kind of started writing some songs when I was probably, gosh, I don't even remember how old I was, maybe 16, 17 years old. And they, I don't remember if I ever really let anyone hear them or anything. I didn't have like the, ability at that time to record them or anything.
Mhm.
I may or may not have sang them out of places. I honestly don't remember, but really, I think where my songwriting kind of began was I started a group when I was 19. I think I was 19, and we started traveling a lot. And when we started the group, we were like, well, we're gonna have to record an album, and we're gonna have songs. And the other guy, he wrote songs, and I was like, hey, I got some ideas for some songs.
Mhm.
And I think actually, if I remember right, I had already written one song, and I had toured with a really big group, and I let them hear the song, and they were like, "That's a really good song. Did you write that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And like, "Wow, that's a great song." And then so when we started this group, I wrote, I don't know, I worked in the mall at the time, and it was so boring. I would sit there and I sold cell phones, and I'd sit there and write songs most of the time because I didn't have anything to do a lot of times. So I wrote most of that album sitting there in the mall.
Wow.
And I think I wrote 7 or 8 songs, and then we started singing with a lot of other groups that were bigger, well known, and we would trade them CDs, and they'd say, "Who wrote these songs?" And I was like, well, "Those songs were my songs." And like, "Wow, can we record those?" And so I started having other people recording them and releasing them and stuff, and then it got to where I got kind of scouted out by some publishing companies and record labels and stuff, and they signed me to be a staff writer where I would write songs for their other artists and stuff. And that was kind of how it started. And then I just wrote songs for myself when I was out singing too. So
Very cool. So what is a talk about that aspect of it, the staff writing part of it? What does a staff writer do? I think of a staff writer like a newspaper where, okay, go cover this. So do they
mhm.
say, okay, here's a band, you listen to kind of their feel and then try and write them a song?
Yeah, a lot like that. Like a lot of times, if an artist was getting ready to do an album, they would reach out to these publishing companies or labels, and they would say, we're looking for new material. So they would know who was looking.
Mhm.
And at that time, like they would bring me down to Nashville. I was pretty young. I was only 22, 23 years old, and they'd bring me down to Nashville and pair me up with all these like, seasoned veteran writers that had all these hits and awards and stuff. And so I would co-write a lot of that stuff with them, and they would say like, such and such is doing an album in 2 months, and they want, they're looking for this kind of song. And sometimes they would give us ideas, or other times we would just write whatever we wanted, and they would put it in like a vault of songs if we had something we wanted to work on. And then they would just keep it in their catalog for if somebody was looking for a specific song like that, they would throw it to them. So that's essentially what staff writers would do, is just when people needed songs, they would write for them specifically, or they would just write for stuff to get kept in the catalog, and then they would hold on to that stuff when people were looking for songs.
Hmm. So is it the case that most artists that you would hear on the radio, for instance, don't write a lot of their own material? They have other people that write it, or do they get involved on some level?
At I would say there's more artists that don't write their own material. Yeah, I'd say that that's definitely the case. I mean, I think now, music has changed a lot with the landscape of the way things are recorded and produced. So, a lot of stuff is done at home and like home-based studios and stuff versus, big production studios like it used to be.
Hmm.
And one thing I think you'll find is like, which I found this a lot, and even now here I run a recording studio and I'll have this happen a lot where I'll have an artist come in and they'll say, I want a song about this. And, I'll basically write the song and then they'll just put their name on it as a co-writer, even though they didn't write any of it. So
Because they
I've
gave
seen,
you an idea.
yeah, or, I remember one time I was at a convention, a music convention, Christian music convention, and me and like two or three other guys were writing a song, and this other writer walks over to us and he's like, "What are you guys doing?" We're like, "Oh, we're writing the song." And it was actually, I think, a song, it was one of my ideas if I remember right. And the other guy comes over and he's like, "Oh, cool, you care if I sit in on the session?" And we're all just kind of looking at each other like, I don't think really anybody wanted him to be there, because the more writers that are on a song, the more you have to split the revenue.
Gotcha.
And I think he contributed like the word "the" somewhere in the song, and so he added his name as a writer. So I've seen that happen a lot and heard a lot of stories like that where people put themselves as writers, and you kind of know a lot of times they really aren't. Like and I think that's the case with a lot of these like really well-known artists. You can look at an album and see in the credits there'll be like, three really really great writers, and then their name will be on there too. And you can pretty much figure that it was probably most of them that did the work, and then the artists, just kind of put their name in there, I think, a lot of
They
times. But
changed one word somewhere because they liked it better. It's like,
right. Yeah. So that happens a lot, and I know a lot of writers and publishers get pretty frustrated with that because, when you're talking about some of these really major artists, it takes a lot of money away from you when you add just, one or two other people to the writing part of it.
hmm,
If you got a big hit song that's getting, hundreds of millions of streams or downloads, and another person's taking a chunk of that, it adds up to a lot of money. So I've heard a lot of people complain about that within the music industry, about people, putting their stamp on it, saying it was them being one of the writers when really they did virtually nothing, but they're still listed. So I've seen that happen a lot
yeah,
too.
how is that tracked, that aspect of it, of how famous a song becomes? Because again, it used to be album sales, record sales, and I think that that is still a part of it, but so much of it is digital now. Spotify, Pandora. I mean, I've got Sirius XM radio in my car. So how is that tracked for how much a song is played and how popular it really becomes?
I honestly don't even know at this point. There is so much stuff that is tallied into that. Like even the Billboard chart, like I don't even know what all that they're factoring into that now, because I mean, it's based on so much stuff. It's based on airplay on radio, traditional radio, downloads, streaming. I want to say I've heard that YouTube even plays into some of that. The streaming on YouTube counts for some of it. So I couldn't honestly tell you.
Mhm.
And I've never had a song big enough yet that, I know anything about any of that. So, but there's so much stuff that is factored into it. I honestly, it would be a nightmare to be like a publisher or, somebody that handles that part of it, because there are just monies that can be collected from so much stuff that you just
Right.
wouldn't even believe.
Well, and
um
I think about it just in terms of the logistics too. I mean, you make an album and let's say you're the artist and you write your own material, there still are producers and other people that are involved in the album, but that's pretty straightforward. But you start talking about you have a song and maybe there's four writers and producers and all these other people, and then it gets streamed and you've got album sales over here, and then I'm over here making a little YouTube video that has your song playing in the background,
right.
all that sort of stuff. It can get very, very complicated. And
Yeah.
your material can be out there and a lot of people can know it. but I would imagine, that doesn't necessarily mean that, all the dollars are flowing in to the people who did the work.
Well, and I can tell you, for me personally, um, when I was young and naive, I signed a deal with a label as a staff writer
Hmm.
and had several other major artists record a lot of my songs. Some of them did really, really well on radio, and I've received almost nothing from it.
Hmm.
I added it up, ballpark estimate of what they actually owe me, and it's a lot of money. I've never seen it. I probably never will see it. And when I kind of, at one point years ago, I kind of looked into seeing legally what my options were to collect the money they owed me.
Hmm.
Um, and, it essentially would cost as much for me to pursue it as I would make probably. So they kind of have you, but it's a very, I want to say crooked industry, but when I had conversations with people who are the middleman between the artists and the writers and stuff, it's a very common thing where people don't get paid what they're supposed to quite often, and a lot of that money is kept by the labels, and they're not paying out correctly. And I
Hmm.
remember when I talked to one of the they're kind of like an aggregate essentially between the publishers and writers, and explained to them my situation. They said, we see this a lot, and they said, unfortunately, the company you're with is one of the worst ones we've ever seen. So that was kind of a bad sign for me, kind of a learning experience. So I think that happens a lot, that people don't get paid what they're owed. But
Hmm.
honestly, like you said, there's just so many things that are factored into it now. It's really hard to keep track of all that stuff.
Right.
So there are people, you have your Taylor Swifts and people like that I'm sure have people that are bulldogs beating down the doors to collect the money on their stuff because it's everywhere. So, but the average person that's not in that position, trying to keep track of where all that revenue is and where it's going, it's extremely hard to do.
Mm. I remember when I was up in Michigan, we had a gentleman who attended our church that worked for a company, but he represented 5 artists that his whole job was to scour the internet for unauthorized uses of their songs and to lock them down. So he'd spend days or hours of the day on YouTube just looking for like homemade videos that, I'd make again with the song in the background, and having YouTube shut it down because then the artists and the writers weren't getting paid. And at first I thought, that's really mean to do that. I'm just trying to make a wedding video or something. But when he explained the reason behind it, and he said it's not just, U2 was one of them at the time. It's not just them. It's the people that write the songs that they don't make the money that the band makes.
Right.
So they need it to be tracked appropriately. I was like,
Hmm.
I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the ugly side of it, I guess. So let's talk about the fun side of it. Give us a story of an experience of writing a song that was interesting or exciting or different for you.
Um, well, probably the last one I wrote would fit that category for me. Um, I've wrote a lot of songs. I honestly don't know how many I have written. I'd like to look that up one day. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess like, I don't know, maybe 250, 300 songs. I'm guessing. I could be way off. I don't know. It could be way more, way less. That's just a ballpark guess. But I think every song is different, at least for me. But during the pandemic, I had a song that was kind of hit me in a different way than I had ever written a song before. And I think it meant a lot to me because of the time that I wrote the song, and because of, what we were going through. And, um, we had, more concerts scheduled this year than we've ever had, and set up to be our best year we were going to ever have. And within about 2 weeks back in March, when this thing, kind of hit, we saw every single concert get canceled and everything kind of get put on hold. And um, I can remember, hearing the stories about how 1 million people a week were going to die from the virus when this thing first started, and there was going to be no food left. And I can remember my wife going to the grocery store and coming back and telling me that they basically had nothing. She couldn't find milk and all that kind of stuff. And so I was, worried about us having food for our kids and stuff. And um, I just shared this with her recently, but I remember not even eating some days because I was so worried, about us not having any income and us and this food and all that stuff that we weren't going to have it for our kids. Um, so it was a hard time. But I remember driving down the road one day, looking in the back of my car, seeing my little kids and my wife sitting beside me, and she was crying. And I just had this experience with God that night. Wasn't even planning on writing a song or thinking about it or anything. I was actually working on some equipment for a church I was doing a sound system for, and they had a mixing board that I was setting up. And I just started getting this song that God just started speaking to me. And usually when I write a song, I kind of have to sit down and think about it and, kind of kick ideas around in my head and
Mm.
plan it out and structure it out and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't like that at all with this song. It was just like as fast as I could write it down, it was just coming to me. And
Wow.
um, my wife and kids went to bed that night, and it was about midnight. And I was sitting in my living room, and I'm just sitting there thinking about the virus and the stuff with all of our concerts being canceled and the food shortages and all that stuff. And I felt the greatest like sense of fear that I've ever felt in my life. It was so overwhelming that it was like I couldn't move. I've never felt anything like that. Like I was almost paralyzed.
Wow.
And I started like, just seeing how strong fear was. Um, I've not really ever been a real fearful person about anything, but that night I felt something I'd never felt. And it was,
Mm.
it was just like it kind of stopped me in my tracks. And this is honestly a true story. Some people may or may not believe this, but this is a true story. It really happened. Um, that night, in that moment when I felt that fear, I'm not sure how long it lasted, but I audibly heard voices singing, like a choir of voices singing the words and the melody to the bridge of the song.
Mm.
And it just kept repeating over and over and over and over. And I
Wow.
sat there and listened to it. And after I listened to it for a few minutes, I just felt all the fear leave,
Mm.
and I felt the greatest sense of peace that I've ever felt in my life. And I felt like um, God was just saying to me, "It's going to be okay."
Wow.
And so I finished that song that night. It was called "I'm Not Afraid," and I remember, the funny thing, we were actually just talking about this. Um, I can remember, at that point, this was like right when this kind of thing first happened. I think I wrote this song like March 20th or something like that, March 23rd. So this was like just a few weeks
Very
after everything had
still on.
shut down.
Yeah.
Um, and my wife, she had told me, she's like, we are not spending any extra money on anything. We're holding on to all the money we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, I said, you're probably not going to like this. I said, but I wrote this song, and I said, I need to pay this guy to help me make the music track for it so we can release it. And I knew she wasn't going to be excited about that. Um, but that same night when I wrote that song, I kind of had this conversation with God, like my wife's not going to let me spend the money to make this song.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, we don't have it to do it. And I felt like God said to me, believe, trust me one more time, Jimmy, just one more time. And I told her that. I said, I knew you were going to say no. And I said, God told me to tell you to trust him one more time. And so she did. And honestly, it's probably been the most successful song we've ever had.
Wow.
Um, we've it's kind of changed a lot of things for us, even within the concerts that we're doing now. We threw it on our new album, and It's probably been our fastest selling album that we've maybe ever done, and we've had a few 100,000 streams of it on Spotify already in a couple months' time. And
Wow.
so it was a really neat experience. But the song, it's kind of become more than a song. It's kind of become like an anthem, um, for me, and I've tried to kind of instill that in people in our concerts, that not just with the whole pandemic, but anything we go through in life, we have that choice whether we're going to be controlled by fear or whether we're going to live by faith.
Hmm.
And you can wake up every day, and whatever that struggle is in your life, you could say, I'm not afraid,
Hmm.
and know that God's with you. So that was probably one of the neatest experiences for me about writing a song.
That is cool. I know right after things started to open back up, you came one of your first concerts back to our church in Wilder and did that song at the end, and there was just this palpable feeling because again, I mean, beginning of August, we're still kind of going through a lot of stuff. Uh, just this feeling of yeah, it is and even in our church, a lot of things changed that month, but when you have that sense of peace and purpose, it really gives you a different perspective on situations that you're facing, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah, and it was cool. Like I got a message from a girl today, which she made comments about several songs, but she had shared with me that she was actually on the verge of committing suicide,
Mm.
and she stumbled across one of my songs on YouTube, within the last few days,
Wow.
and talked about how that God essentially used that song to save her life. And she had found the Not Afraid song today, and she was talking about how much that concept is helping her with dealing with some of the depression and different things that she's dealing with right now. But yeah, I think that when we all get a hold of, and that was one of the reasons I wrote that song, and I share with people, one of the things that Jesus said the most in the Bible is, be not afraid, don't be afraid. He reminded us of that so many times. And so I think that sometimes we just need that reminder that no matter what we're going through, we don't have to be afraid. And when we live that way, it changes our whole outlook on everything.
Mm. Forget the professional aspect. This is what you do. This is your job for a moment. What is it like when you get a message like that from somebody that they've come across something that you wrote, you've sung, you've done, and they said this has been used in such a way that it's changed the direction of my life. What goes through your mind when you get a message like that?
It's very humbling, um, to think that, life is so precious, and to think that God allows somebody like me, who really doesn't, deserve to do anything, um, to be a part of helping somebody. And that's really, why I make music. It's not because I want people to hear me sing or hear, how good a song is or anything like that. The whole purpose behind what I do is to help people and to change lives. And so, it's humbling, but it's rewarding, because you feel like, um, it's more than just a song. It's there's a purpose behind it, and it's making a difference. And so it's pretty neat. And God has used messages like that for me, just to keep me going. I was sharing a story with someone the other day. It was 2 years ago in March. I had for the first time in my life had hit that burnout stage. We had what was looking to be the biggest opportunity that I'd ever had. And it took multiple months of leading up to this, for it to get to where it was at. And then it all fell through, and I was extremely disappointed, um, and kind of had all my eggs in that basket, so to speak. And then about a week later, we had another opportunity, and that fell through. And I can remember, we were in Indiana on a Sunday night, and did a concert, and there were only four people that showed up. And normally, you know, that probably wouldn't have bothered me that much, because I've sang to plenty of small crowds. But that night, it was just kind of like the final straw for me, I think, because I
Mhm.
was so discouraged already.
Mhm.
And I can remember, I remember sitting there that night, not even wanting to go up there, and I just told God, I was like, I'm done doing this. I'm not going to do it anymore. And so I had already made that decision. I think I had about, I don't know, 2 months, a month and a half worth of concerts left, maybe like 15, 20 concerts. I don't even remember, but I wasn't even working. I can remember I was so discouraged. I'd supposed to be in my office working. I'd literally just sit here and stare at the wall and do nothing.
Mhm.
And for hours. And the cool part was, I don't remember if it was the very next week or the week after. I really can't remember. It might have been 2 weeks after, but we sang at a church, and there were a lot of kids and stuff there. And after that concert was over, I had a little girl come up to me, about 11 years old, and she handed me a note, and she said, don't read this right now. She said, I want you to read it when you leave.
Mhm.
I was like, okay. And so I got out in the van and read it. And this little girl was a foster kid that had been taken away from her family, had been abused, and had this horrible story. And she had found out that day or the day before that she wasn't going to ever see her family again.
Mhm.
And she talked about, she was at the lowest point she'd ever been to and just felt like giving up. And I remember in that letter, she said, God sent you here, and your songs changed my life. And she said, don't ever stop. And things like that, just they keep you going,
Wow.
um, even when you don't feel like it sometimes. And so I think, as much as it helps the people, I think that are hearing the songs, hearing that kind of feedback for me is invaluable, because it makes me write another song.
That's cool. Talk about the concert experience a little bit, because I know you. Again, we've had you at our church here a couple of times, and I've connected with you on social media. But I know that you have some interesting experiences and conversations with pastors. Talk about that a little bit and why that can be the case.
Are you talking about, like, on the positive side, or about the hair? Yeah, yeah, we've had, some interesting hair conversations. My hair does stick up a little bit, and that's been an issue with some pastors. I've actually, believe it or not, even had a few pastors ask me to measure how long my hair was with a ruler. And I'm like, are you serious? Yeah, I'm serious. I'm like, wow. I'm like, at that point, does it even matter how long it is? But
Like at
um,
the concert, you're there ready
no,
to perform, or
this was a situation, the one that I'm thinking of. We had sang at a church, and this pastor had a really good friend that pastored another church not too far from there. And he said, hey, whenever you come back this way, I want you to call this friend of mine and tell him, that you've been here, that I recommended you, that our people really enjoyed it, and that we know their congregation would really enjoy it too, because they did a lot of events together and stuff.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay. So a few months later, whenever it was, we were singing back in that area and scheduled a concert. And at that time, we used to mail physical posters to churches. We didn't do now we pretty much do all that stuff online where people could download them. But we had these big, 11 by 17 posters or something that we would send out in the mail. And so I sent them to the guy, and he was all excited about the concert before he saw me, because he's like, yeah, we've heard nothing but great things. And, I actually heard your CD. I guess he heard it, but didn't see me. He's like, we're excited. So he gets the posters and calls me, and he's like, there's a problem. I was like, oh, really? What's the problem? He's like, well, we didn't know you looked like what you did. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, your hair is out of control. And um, he he went on and on. So he's like, how tall do you think your hair is? I'm like, I have no idea. He's like, well, would you mind measuring it for me? I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, I'm dead serious. I was like, if it comes down to that, buddy, I was like, I don't think that's gonna, matter at this point. But we've had, and one of my favorite stories was we sang at a church, and we always have to get to the churches early to set up our sound system.
Mhm.
And so we were at this church, and I was there, and it was an hour and a half before church started. And I'm setting up our equipment, and this little older lady walks in. And she walks in the back of the church and just stares at me, and she says, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Jimmy." And she's like, "Well, what are you doing here in our church?" And I said, "Well, we're going to be singing here today. We came to share our music ministry with you guys." And she looked at me for a minute and just kind of stared me up and down. And she goes, "Huh, I wish I would have just stayed home today." Which that was kind of an all-time classic for me. But we've had a lot of stuff like that happen, and people make issues. But we've had a lot of people come up after a concert and say, when I saw your picture, I wasn't sure I wanted to come, but I'm really glad I did. We really enjoyed it. And so most of the time that's the case. But yeah, we've had a lot of interesting situations with leadership in churches and such. And you think at this point it would be beyond that, but I still run into it um, all the time.
Church
So
people are wonderful, wonderful people. A lot of churches very giving, very caring, but we can get quirky about stuff sometimes for sure.
yeah.
Oh goodness. Talk about the music itself. I know just in the albums that I've had and the songs that you've done in concerts, you do some covers.
Mhm.
And then of course you have your own material. How do you decide what you want to do a cover of versus just writing your own?
Honestly, usually it's a budget thing. It's way cheaper to do cover albums because when you do original stuff, you have to pay a lot of additional musicians and stuff to produce the music tracks, which is extremely expensive. If I had the money to do, I probably would never do a cover album or wouldn't do much of them. Um, because I have literally enough ideas I could never finish them all in my lifetime of writing songs. I just have thousands and thousands of titles and lyrics and stuff laying around where I haven't finished songs. So I could never write them all in my lifetime. But a lot of it just becomes a budget thing. We try to be consistent with putting out new music, and so that time frame between when we're able to afford to do a full-blown original album where I'm writing all of it with original tracks and stuff, it's takes a while to get to that point. But cover albums are just easy to throw together fast,
Mhm.
and cheap, and people, I think, people like songs that they're familiar with, especially in church. I know we just released their new album called Church Stuff 2 or 3 months ago, and it's sold like hotcakes. And I think it's because it's all songs that people are familiar with. They hear them on the radio. They've sang them in church. Whether it's now or some of them are older songs that they sang when they grew up and stuff in church. So people like that familiar feeling of songs that they can sing along with and stuff. So that's partly why we do it too. I think that the best connection for me with people is always between things that I've actually written and sharing with them. I always, you know, see that to be the most effective as far as reaching people when we're doing concerts or even online. Just like some of the stories I shared with the people coming across stuff online and talking about how it impacted them. I don't know that I've ever really had that happen with a cover song where somebody said, "Hey, you did this song and it really touched me," because I've already heard it, probably a bunch before and probably better than what I do it anyway. But I don't know. I just think there's a different connection to your own songs than there are to other people's songs, at least for me. So I think that comes across. But like I said, a lot of it is, we just try to. And now, that's the other thing with the music. It's not like it used to be. It used to be an artist could put out a new album every 2 to 3 years, and that was acceptable. I mean, with the way things are now, you just constantly have to be putting out content. And I actually am really bad about not doing it enough. I stay so busy just trying to keep all this. It's a one man show. I mean, I have zero help with anything.
Mm.
Everything I do, from the business side to the ministry side to the promotion, all is all done by me. I don't have any help. So I have so many things that I have to cover, that I don't have the time to probably put out as much new music as I'm really supposed to, according to marketing people and such. But we try and um, put out as much as we can. So
So the
it's
videos, like some of your songs have had music videos with them as well. Those are all produced by you and done by you as well.
unfortunately, yes. I would love to not have to do that stuff, but that's where I'm at. And I'm not very good at video stuff. So, I do the best I can with it, but video, I know a lot about audio. That's like my world, but video stuff, is not my friend. And I'm trying to learn, and I think I've gotten better at it. But again, what people don't understand, and I've grown to appreciate it. Like when you watch a movie or something, you do not understand how long it takes to do that stuff. I mean, just to make, a little 2-minute video where you're filming this angle and filming this angle and filming this and this and this and this and editing all that. I mean, it takes so long to do it. And
Mm.
so, just for me to put together one song, it might take, 4 or 5 hours of shooting it, and then another 2 or 3 hours or longer of editing it just to do one song. So
Mm.
it's a lot of time. And especially again, when you do it all yourself, because when I do videos, I don't even have anybody that helps me shoot the videos. I have to do it all myself. So I'm positioning the cameras in different spots myself, and, running all that. So it's very time consuming, and it makes you really appreciate when you watch, um, professional videos and movies. You really have to start thinking about how long it takes to make that stuff. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. But yes,
You're
it's
probably looking forward to the day when your kids are a little older and they can help you with some of that stuff.
yeah, yeah, that would be nice.
Then.
They're
Free
helping
flavor.
some with. They recorded a song on the new album, and
Yes, they do.
they're singing now with me in the concerts, and that's
Mm.
always everybody's favorite part. So they're starting to sing, some stuff by themselves at the concerts now. They've kind of gotten up to that point where they're doing that, so it's good. But yeah, it'll be nice to have some helpers, that's for sure.
Talk about the concert experience that you endeavor to produce. Like obviously you're sharing your music, but there's a kind of a message, a theme to it. What is your goal when somebody comes to one of your concerts? What is it you're hoping they walk away thinking, feeling, having gotten out of that time?
Well, I like to, I kind of like to do it in two stages. Number one, I want people to have fun, so I kind of try to structure my concerts to where the front half of it is very much kind of fun and up, to
Mhm.
where, people are just having a good time, and you're kind of tearing down any of those walls of resistance or anything that they may have brought in there with them. Because I've learned that, when people feel freer and they feel comfortable, you can communicate with them more effectively. And so I kind of try to, make it to where the concerts are fun in the beginning, and then in the second half or the end half of it, I kind of try to bring it down, and and I just try to be real with people. And I think, that's one thing that has really helped me, in reaching people, especially within the church realm. You get so much stuff that is just what I call, churchy lingo,
Right.
that, if you say it, you're going to get a response from this person or that person. And, if that's what you're going for, that's fine. And there are people that do that, and, they know that game, and I do too. But my thing is, I try to come from a place to where if any person walks in, regardless of their economic level, their family life, their education background, any of that stuff, I try to come at a place to where what I say and what I share will connect with all those people. Um, so I just try to be very real with people, and one of the things that I've learned, even with writing songs and with the way that I try to approach concerts, is I used to write when I first started writing songs this way, because I used to write a lot of songs that were just very churchy kind of stuff, like I said. And then I remember I think it was in 2006, I did an album called Things Are Looking Different. And that was kind of the first album where I just kind of started writing things that were coming from a very personal life experience place. And I can remember, when I immediately started singing those songs, I started seeing a totally different response from people. And it was strange to me because I thought, well, this song means a lot to me because I've lived through this, but it's not going to mean that much to anyone else. But those were the songs that meant the most to people, because what I found out was so many other people had felt the same way or been through the exact same types of things.
Right.
So, I try to come to a place to where I connect with people on an emotional level and encourage them. I want people to leave my concerts feeling encouraged,
Mm.
feeling uplifted, feeling inspired, knowing that there is hope. And that's the one word that I've really kind of tried to structure our concerts the last couple years, particularly around the word hope,
Right.
because I think it's what the world needs right now. So my goal is if people have a good time and they leave feeling a sense of hope, then I feel like I've accomplished my goal.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, there's one song I wanted to ask you about. The song, I believe it's called "Pain Is Real, but So Is Hope." Is that correct?
Yep.
I know there's a story behind that song. Could you take a moment and kind of explain that?
Are you talking about my testimony about when I was sick? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. Well, that really, I don't know really where the song kind of came from. I was actually trying to think of that today because that was the song that the young lady sent me a message about today, that told me she found that on YouTube when she was getting ready to commit suicide, and it saved her life. Um, if I remember right, I actually just saw that quote somewhere one day. Like, I don't remember if it almost seemed like I was scrolling through Instagram or something like that, and I just saw somebody had posted "Pain is real, but so is hope." And I was working on our album, my Stronger Than That album, and I thought, man, that would be a really cool idea for a song.
Right.
So I think I just kind of wrote it based on that. I don't really remember a whole lot more about writing it than that, but it's one of my favorite songs. But yeah, in our concerts, I just kind of share the story about um, how we all go through situations in life that sometimes look hopeless. And when I was about 15, I got very sick, and I spent almost 3 years of my life in hospitals and doctors' offices, and I just kept getting sicker and sicker. The doctors couldn't figure it out, and they basically told me when I was about 18-ish, that if a miracle didn't happen, I wasn't going to be alive much longer. I had lost close to 100 pounds. I was on all kinds of medicine. And one day I was laying there on my couch, and we heard a knock at the door. And these two guys were standing there, and we thought they were actually truancy officers because I was missing so much school for being in the hospitals and stuff all the time, that we were having trouble with the school. And so my mom and dad thought they were truancy officers because they had suits on. And they said, "Does Jimmy Dooley live here?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Well, can we come in for a minute and pray for him?" And my mom's like, "Well, who are you?" And they're like, "Well, that doesn't matter. Just know that God sent us here to pray for him." And so these two guys came in, and they were real tall, had these suits with big trench coats on, pulled up in like a black Cadillac. And they just came in and said, "God sent us here to pray for you." And I remember my parents just kept like asking them who they were and they wouldn't tell them, which we thought was really strange. But they prayed for me. They only were there for about 10 minutes or something, and then they left. And I never saw them again, and never, still to this day, I don't know who they were. But I started getting better from that day. And, it wasn't like an immediate thing. It took time and
Hmm.
over a course of time, but I kind of looked at that. It was like the turning point, um, for me and my health. And I just started getting better and better. And here I am today, a long time later. But so that's kind of the story behind where the hope talks about there.
Wow. As we get ready to close this time out, talk a little bit about your ministry. How can people connect with you, and your latest album, and how they can find that as well?
Okay. Well, you can go. We actually have two websites. One is for the more churchy people, and that's just jimmydooley.com. And then we have another website that we use for more of our youth focused type events. And that's jimmydooleymusic.com.
Mhm.
Um, all of our music can be found on, iTunes, Apple Music, YouTube, all that stuff. What really helps me a lot right now, though, is if you stream my stuff on Spotify. That helps a ton. We're doing really, really well with Spotify. And the more people that stream it, it bumps us up in the algorithm even more. And so right now, I'm making enough money on streaming revenue that's essentially funding all the new music that I'm creating.
Wow.
So anyone that can check us out on Spotify and stream some stuff on there and share it with people, that helps a lot.
Mhm.
We have a new song that I'm actually working on, that was supposed to be done a long time ago, and I've just been so busy I haven't got it done. But it should be coming out here soon. We wanted to, initially it was going to be kind of tackling the whole racial thing,
Mhm.
but looking at the landscape of where our world is right now with the whole racial thing and with the whole, mask situation and the whole political situation, you just see so much division. So I kind of have wrote this song, in a way that it kind of covers all that stuff. And it's, the purpose of the song is to kind of bring people together and hopefully unify people and bring some peace, back in a time when we really need it right now. So that song should be coming out very soon, um, which we'll have to make a video, unfortunately. But uh,
By
uh,
we, you mean you?
yeah, me. Um, so I may have some help with it though. That there's a kid that he actually produced the music track on it, and we kind of collaborated on it a little bit. And he says he's good at video stuff, so hopefully he'll help me out a little bit. But so that'll be coming out soon. And then we were really hoping to release a Christmas album. One of my goals has always been to write an entire Christmas album of all original Christmas stuff. I tried to finish it last year. We ran out of time and money. This year I was going to release it in November, but because of the whole COVID thing and just the uncertainty of everything, I'm probably going to hold off. I don't have it done anyway, but I felt like it wouldn't be a good year to release it this year because I kind of felt like it was going to get overshadowed by everything going on, and it wouldn't have the impact that it would if I released it at another time. But I will probably release one or two songs off of that, like the beginning of November. So there'll be a couple new Christmas songs that I've written that will release like in November too, and I have to make videos for those too, probably. So, but so there'll be some new stuff coming out in the near future.
Great. And you are continuing to do concerts and go into your concerts are all in churches, is that correct?
Not all of them. The majority are, but we do a lot of other things too. We
Mhm.
do like a lot of like community events. There's like a couple fall festival things that we're singing at coming up, and so we do different. There's a like a memorial run thing for people that I'm singing at here like in a week or something. So we really sing anywhere that we get the opportunity. We're not really singing at a whole lot of bars or anything right now. I don't know if that would work out too well, but so anywhere that we can get our foot in the door, though, we come and share a message of hope and try our best to fit in with whatever crowd we're singing to. So
Hey, don't knock the bars. Those people need hope. Uh,
yeah.
sure. But awesome. Well, any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to share, kind of in conclusion, open floor, whatever you got before we go?
Not too much. I really appreciate you having me, and I appreciate all you do. And we think the world of you, and we appreciate your ministry and all that you've done, and praying for you and your in future endeavors and all that kind of stuff. But it's just been fun to get to hang out with you today. And
We're going to have to do a community event, I think, coming up here for
yeah,
get involved in the real estate stuff. Maybe do a big like block party open house with live music. I don't know, but now that you've said that, I've got it in my mind. That could be kind of
yeah,
cool. So, well, anyway, Jimmy, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing about your ministry, about your music, about the process. Very, very interesting. And everybody watching, thank you for tuning in. We will put the links for Jimmy's website in the comments when we post the video, so you can go directly there. And of course, check him out on Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, Amazon Music, whatever you're streaming. Check him out on there. We appreciate it. Have a great one, Jimmy. Thanks so much.
thank you, sir. Good to talk to you.
Bye.